Hello, good people, and welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we cover role-playing video games in depth. I am your host, and the Beaker Ducks of this podcast, Braden Arbitrary Water Redacted, joining me on this adventure through a land of magic and myth are the Ram clan of this podcast, Chris Zombie Pie Redacted.
Dear readers, you may recall that we normally have 3 people on this podcast, but only having 2 is not that abnormal.
If you want,
Older readers might recall when Zombie Pie and A1 Ronnie the Bear would talk about Final Fantasy for upwards of 3.5 hours, just the 2 of them.
Ronnie the Bear.
It's lore building, right?
Yeah.
No. Yes,
I can
hello,
pretend
hi.
to be Jeff. Oh, hey guys, I'm Jeff. Oh, my wife isn't interested in watching me play this.
So you only played it for like 2 hours,
So
and then
I only
passed
played
judgment.
it for like 2 hours.
After 2 hours.
I
love you. I love you, Jeff. Jeff, we love you.
Oh, I'm just gonna go play the Final Fantasy games.
Hey, man. I mean,
We love you, Jeff.
at least you don't have to. I'm gonna buy one of those Taco Bell Baja Blast pies, and I'm probably gonna have to review that when we record that next Final Fantasy podcast.
If they sell the Baja Blast gelato in my area, I will purchase it.
I'm gonna buy that pie. It's distressing how that pie, in some pictures that people have found it, is blue, and then in other pictures it's green. It doesn't seem like the quality control for the Baja Blast pie has been great.
A sea green color. That's what it should be in the brand guidelines. Anyways,
we're here to talk about maybe a game that, as you have sometimes said, Braden, occupies a genre of its own creation. Something that is truly special. King of Dragon Pass, and also 6 Ages 1, Ride Like the Wind, and 6 Ages 2, Lights Going Out. So that's a trifecta of games. I don't know how if we're
all
actually
kind of the
rank
same
them
game.
all. I think we'll just kind of rank King of Dragon Pass.
Yeah,
and
we'll
maybe
just rank
6
King
Ages.
of Dragon Pass.
But this was my pick because, as I said at the end of our previous podcast, which was for Fear and Hunger, I feel like we could have recorded this podcast last year, and everything we would have to say about King of Dragon Pass and the 6 Ages games is basically what we're going to say today.
We needed a layup.
The land of Glorantha, the wild mine of, what's his name, David Dunham, the rise and fall and rise again of A Sharp. Just a lot to unpack here, and dear listeners, I hope that we do a good job of unpacking it.
I apologize for the audio quality of the previous podcast. I'm still remembering how to do this. It turns out that Audacity's the default settings for truncate silence are very aggressive.
Anyways, plugs. We got to get better.
Yeah,
I think that was
plugs.
The big needs improvement grade last time.
Hey, nerds. And also we have to remember not to curse.
What was the email? I forgot to write it on. I'm going to be honest. I forgot.
At deep.lol.
Yeah.
You can support the podcast at patreon.com/deeplistens. If we get 30 total patrons, we will play Ultima 9 for this podcast. I will attempt to wrap in one Jeff Rude, even though he claims to be retired. We will see. And if not...
I've already threatened Jeff Rudd. Jeff, if you're listening right now, we are dragging your ass to play Ultima 9.
We're going to make
And if you skip out on Ultima 9,
a paladin is.
You absolutely need to play Mass Effect Andromeda. God damn it.
Yeah. And if not, listen, we have friends. We swear. We have people. We know people who will sit in front of a microphone with us.
But it's not just about joining the Deep Listens Discord and that as your
and
benefit.
Yelling at us.
If you donate $3 or more, you can suggest a pick that goes in the fan pick slush pile. In fact, our last podcast, Fear and Hunger, was a game from that fan pick slush pile. We've got a lot of stuff. We generally speaking, it's going to be easier for us to do those fan picks because we only got 2 people to suggest games. But anyways, yes, donate, increase your current submission or donation incentive goal or amount, and you can maybe resuggest a game as well as gift a subscription or membership to our Discord.
Tell your
Deep
friends.
Listens Discord to a friend. Spread the word. We're mostly normalized people. I'll be better about talking about food.
I'm trying not to curse while recording these now.
Anyways.
So, Chris Zombie Pie Redacted.
Yes.
Let's talk about a game that we both love. A game that I would describe as there isn't anything quite like it, at least until they just straight up made 2
sequels
/ which are actually prequels.
But even then, even with those sequels, no one has emulated or tried to copy King of Dragon Pass or Six Ages. The only people making these games are A Sharp and David Dunham, a man who we will talk about later. But, man.
King of Dragon Pass is a video game that came out in 1999 for the personal computer.
Yep. And it was a commercial failure. The story that we often have heard repeated over and over again is that the game only sold around 8,000 box copies. David Dunham, who was the brainchild or the person pushing this game forward, had spent about $500,000 making this game. So for it to only sell about 8,000 box copies is not good. Apparently
so
based off of the
spent most of their development time doing business software.
Oddly enough, David Dunham says that the game sold remarkably and disproportionately well in Finland. So cool. Just to give you an idea about why that date is kind of weird, this game was initially conceived for the Apple Newton, their kind of weird portable PDA. Hey, kids, remember PDAs when, before the advent of the modern smartphone, you had to have, a separate device that was just as big as your old school Nokia, if not bigger, where you could do, document editing and
hey,
OS
cool
navigation.
Let's rap to you about the Apple Pippin.
That kind of stuff. But
you like Marathon?
Slowly but surely, Dunham, the lead designer and programmer for the game, decided that handheld platforms would ultimately hold back the original release of King of Dragon Pass. But Dunham, let's just say, erroneously believed that there was a healthy gaming community with the iOS community. So he just narrowed his focus down to releasing the game on Macintosh.
Yep.
Eventually expanding to the PC, but let's just say that 1999 release was not good. As I said, the game did not sell well.
So why are we talking about this? How did they make 2 successor games? What could have happened to change this game's fortunes?
So A Sharp, which is the developer of this game, ultimately decides to revive this game with the advent of the iPad. Again, kind of going back to this game's original roots with being a PDA game. And Dunham, with a skeleton crew, I believe about like 12 people. Like, this game started with a very small team and like continued on with just a small team. And a majority of the writing and kind of like world building duties were by David Dunham himself, as well as the person that led this whole universe, the Glorantha universe, of Greg Stafford. More on that later with Braden. The iPad release did shockingly well. The iOS version, in the very early phases of its release, sold 30,000 copies, which was enough for this to get coverage on major websites and talk on things such as like Rock, Paper, Shotgun. And it was a weirdo game. Like, let's not dance around this. This was a game for weirdos. You can go back and watch the Austin Walker quick look for King of Dragon Pass, where he says this is just for like the purest form of tabletop fans, like people who like tabletop games. And it developed a pretty good following, enough to where A Sharp felt like they could release the game on release a sequel to the game, which was actually a prequel called Six Ages. And let's just say that King of Dragon Pass, when it releases on GOG on desktop, as well as Six Ages, they sold decently well.
They did quite well.
And that leads to a second
these games
sequel,
had a
Ages
cult
2.
following,
Mm-hmm.
but it was very much one of those things where, like, I had never heard of this game until I watched a Let's Play of it on the internet.
But weird origins aside, King of Dragon Pass is a weird mixture of a turn-based strategy game with a role-playing game with, strategy, base building, simulation stuff, city building stuff, character creation stuff, and it has no animation. It depicts people and events with a hand-drawn artwork, but if you have no idea what game we're talking about, just Google King of Dragon Pass and Six Ages and look at the art. Just look at it. Just enjoy it. Take it in. Let it course through your veins.
Do you like cool art?
I sure do, Braden. I sure do.
Do you like weird fantasy art?
Man. Yeah, I do.
Depicting Bronze Age peoples?
Yeah.
In tribal settings? How about duck people?
Yeah, the duck people. But anyways, the weird thing in terms of the chronology of this universe is that it starts out as the fictional world of Glorantha. And Braden, I think this is where you know a little bit more than me, which was started by Greg Stafford for the Hero Quest universe.
Yes, for Hero Quest.
I think the first game was like the first actual fantasy board game war set was like White
Hero
Bear
Quest.
and Red Moon.
But one they have revived within the last couple years. The Games Workshop thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same. So Glorantha is a world that has had numerous tabletop supplements, but honestly, it's one of those things where
people who like it and will talk about it are of a certain era of tabletop role-playing that...
I might argue you also don't need a huge put out a bunch of tabletop supplements.
But it speaks to an old school era. Like the first edition of Chaosium is 78, 79 is second edition. Back in the day, you could basically print out a handbook and people would just run with it. There was a level of like self-publishing that we regrettably don't really see outside of like people releasing their tabletop stuff on itch.io. Like, that's where it is
or
now.
Drive-thru-RPG.
Yeah. But anyways, so this is technically an adaptation of a pre-existing universe, which I think some people don't realize. And if you think and find the clunkiness of the proper noun syndrome of King of Dragon Pass is bad, it's just as bad in the tabletop game.
But also, it's good.
Yeah, it's in the name of you basically creating your characters. And I guess that's where we need to talk about how this game plays.
Yes, let me
Braden,
tell you.
how does this game, in quotations, play?
All right. Well, so these games are clan management sims that very much you are a semi-nomadic Bronze Age mythical clan from a world of fantasy and magic. And so you start the clan creation in all of these games, describing which of the gods you worship, describing your clan's general outlook towards outsiders, whether you keep slaves or not, is a big factor. There's also, in the case of King of Dragon Pass, you explicitly say, are you going to be a peace clan, a balanced clan, or a war clan, which determines your general mode of interacting with other peoples.
Yep.
And
I would say just as like again, to go back to the idea of this is like a tabletop experience in its purest form. You're literally like just clicking through stuff, and let's say the game is very obtuse
it's very
or
choose your own adventure-y,
esoteric about how it's placing you on an alignment chart.
It does not want to... the mechanics in these games are intentionally opaque, and it's very much a thing about getting a feel for things. So once you create your clan, you are given a management screen, and the management screen is going to be 90% of the game. And you can do things like raid other clans, explore the wilderness, do trading missions. So it's very 4X-y like that. But in between your actions, you get a lot of choose-your-own-adventure style dilemmas, where every member of your clan ring has input on whatever is happening, be it like, yo, dog, this guy's house, it's haunted. And that's a problem. How do we solve this? And some members of your clan ring will be like, listen, we've got to put forward a legal complaint against this ghost.
Yep.
And then if you pick that, it's like, all right, your shamans tried to negotiate with the ghost using the laws of your clan.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes there are behind-the-scenes dice rolls based on a bajillion different little factors.
Which the game does not communicate what ways in which it's skill checking you, which is going to be something that we talk about over and over again. But in the purest form, this is a turn-based game.
It is.
The game is broken down into 5 seasons: Sea Season, Fire Season, Earth Season, Dark Season, Storm Season. And each of these seasons is 2 weeks time. You get basically 2 turns to complete actions in terms of improving or doing things in the greater world. You can either build like ramparts to protect your city from raids and attacks, or you can like make sacrifices to gods in hopes of being able to build a shrine to them to get these buffs that can be make or break kind of things that assist you during hard times.
Yes.
At the end of a year, you enter another screen that you're greeted with when you first boot up the game, which is called Sacred Time, where you allocate magic. These are basically ways in which you can improve your ability to pass skill checks, or maybe not. It's not always clear in terms of how that Sacred Time
Put more clan magic into war so you can raid better.
The clan creation stuff, I don't want to dwell on this very much, but like some of this clan creation stuff is, again, I realize that the game is basically putting you on a grid that is its own version of an alignment chart. But there's that, like, one of the first choices you make is like who in your early history, which god do you want to worship? And you have all these long lists of like these gods, and the sentences are a mouthful. I continue to struggle to like just read them just because there's a lot of weird words, but you get this kind of overwhelming list of like gods, and this is something that's going to happen throughout. Like, do you want the healing of Orlanth or the battle of extinguishing fields? And you don't have anything to kind of tell you that
you don't have the context unless you read the codex or are aware of the table upsetting.
Yep.
And I think that's a good thing because
it is, because it leads to a lot of organic, I guess that I did barn tar for my starting god, and now all of my leaders are above average in plants. But, it's not for everyone, let's say. It's not for everyone.
So, yes, the basic flow of this game is you go through the 5 seasons. Some of them it's like, hey, you shouldn't raid during Earth season because then people are going to be planting crops and you need people to plant crops and not go raiding.
Yeah.
Similarly, fire season, which is the summer, basically, you do want to go raiding because the weather is good and you don't need people to harvest crops until the next season. So I think this game has something in common with like a cultist simulator or a Nobi Boy, maybe, where it's a game. The game part of the video game is learning how to play it as much as it is playing it. It is learning the rules, because one of the things that I think all of these games do incredibly well as pieces of world building is they put you in the mindset and put you in a leadership position that is significantly alien from modern outlooks. So, and this changes between the 3 games.
Yep.
So, for example, in King of Dragon Pass, you are, a late stage clan. You are very much like, we don't trust outsiders. We don't trust weird foreigners. And if you make decisions that are generous towards people you are...
non-believers.
Yes, your ancestors shunned, it will decrease your clan mood, and people don't like it. People don't like it when you, let's say, maybe there's a clan of humanoid ducks down in the valley, and, they're just hanging out, and your clan ring's like, what do we do? And everyone on your clan ring is like, we need to kill them, or we need to conquer them, or we need to extract tribute from them. Yeah. Everyone. And the advice you get depends on the people you have on your clan ring. Some people are more competent in certain matters than others.
And sometimes you can tell that their competencies are too low for them to give good advice, because they'll just outright say, I got no dog in this race. I don't care. But one of the core things is just knowing what is an acceptable action in a season versus an unacceptable action. Like during the sea season, that's a good time for you to do explorers and trade. And then when you immediately transition to like the dark season, if you're trying to do anything other than like hold feasts or do sacrifices or researching mysteries or completing hero quests,
you're
going to lose that turn
during the dark season. It's
you're
too
gonna
snowy.
Lose that turn, which again, you learn how this game works by doing rather than like the game leading you through it. And I know that that's not to everyone's cup of tea, but when the visual tour de force that you're being subjected to is this, I don't care. I really don't care.
If the artwork was not as good and as weird as it is, I don't think you could get away with this if it was just text.
Or also, like, the text that is here is bananas.
Yes.
Just bonkers. Just wild. And you can tell that David Dunham really, really cares about Glorantha and really wants no stone left unturned in this universe that he's constantly getting the rights to adapt into video game form.
Tell me about the cheese spirit.
So the cheese spirit, you need to, well, again, there are gods and there are spirits, and you have to find spirits that are just roaming around in the land. and then you have to bargain with them to get their buffs. The weird thing about King of Dragon Pass, if it weren't for the fact that it's a little too esoteric in terms of its core mechanics, it maybe is the best game to start with, because going from King of Dragon Pass to Six Ages, not having those sliders is like, yo, everyone's starving, just crank up the cropland slider. Like, they get rid of that, and you're no longer able to directly control your food output. So,
yeah. But in a lot of ways, the Six Ages games are more transparent with
absolutely
mechanics and like how many cows, how many heads of cattle should I give to another clan as a gift?
With you, it's like a lot of trial and error in King of Dragon Pass. In Six Ages, you usually will have like one person's like, yeah, it's 7.
Yeah,
sacrifice 7.
You should sacrifice at least 6 cows to a god, more if you didn't put points into ritual this year. So there's a lot of intuiting going on.
So I would say if after we kind of make this pitch, you're interested in playing these games, my order of like recommendations is play Six Ages, then King of Dragon Pass, and then Six Ages 2 is definitely the game for people who are still into this shit, because that game is definitely for hardcore mode people.
Yeah.
And it's great.
It's lights going out, all the gods are dying, everything's going bad.
Yeah. But anyways, the one thing that kind of carries over from King of Dragon Pass to both of the Six Ages game is that the game is basically broken into 3 distinct acts. The early game, where you're kind of like managing one small little clan, the mid game where you're starting to err towards becoming a king, and then setting yourself for, I guess it's like a weird version of like Realm Divide, where you're dividing up and you're having like these tributaries.
Making alliances. You are trying to diminish clans that don't like you, and there will be people who don't like you, and otherwise improving your prestige. And hey, guess what? If you have more wealth, people are more likely to want to raid you.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be careful about that. And if you don't invest
enough in like your guards and your knights and your warriors, they will know that they can just steamroll you, and they'll attack you for that reason as well. Look, yeah, that first early phase of the game, regardless of which version of the game, is really just like make food, keep making food, make food, get cows, make food. And
sell
then,
cows to buy food.
The second step is always start raiding, start attacking, start raiding and attacking.
Send trade missions.
No. Yeah. Then you work on your diplomacy, which this is not a great diplomacy system.
No, it's very much just like, hey, you should give people gifts and, pay favors when due, and then people will think more highly of you. But
and you have a lot of people around you that you can go to.
Just give people cows.
But you can't give too many cows, otherwise your farmers will be pissed off.
Yeah. So give
them goods.
You can get good at making craft items worth the unit of currency in the world of King of Dragon Pass is cows worth of goods,
which is something. I mean, it's something.
This is a pre-currency era.
It's interesting to like I don't know how many other games have tried to depict Bronze Age era civilizations other than like Egypt and Nile River-based civilizations. So this is kind of like in a category of its own just by its subject matter. But yeah, you there's a lot of risk rewards in especially the early stage. And once you get to like that middle act, you're just on a gravy train where basically no one can touch you until you get to the end game, where the game will cave your teeth in. But I feel like for me, most of the times where my campaigns go south is in the early stages, where I either got raided and I wasn't able to respond accordingly, or I made a bunch of sacrifices and didn't have anything to show for it. And so now all my cows are dead and there's no way of getting out of that hole. And that can be frustrating because a lot of the coin flippery feels very arbitrary, even if you put the points into like getting the good stuff, like being able to contact those gods, to build those shrines, to protect yourself against disease or increase your cow fertility. And sometimes you just aren't able to get out of that hole in that early phase of like, oh, you got low food supply and people are pissed. If you can get out of that hole, it's a great time because some of the later game stuff is kind of cool. Like being the actual king of Dragon Pass is kind of cool.
That's the actual goal of the game. That is the quote unquote win condition. Is you unite enough clans behind you to form a kingdom, and that is also kind of the objective in Six Ages Ride the Wind. Lights going out. The
weird
win condition is don't die.
So yeah, let's talk about like King of Dragon Pass.
Let's talk about what distinguishes these games.
So King of Dragon Pass is distinguished by being from the perspective of the Orlanthi. These are a war-based clan that values attacking and raiding.
Yes, like strength and boasting and showing outsiders what's what. Whereas
Six Ages is more related to diplomacy, trade,
Elmo,
and
the god of the sun.
And also doing religious favors. So some of the buffs for getting those shrines are way better than they were in King of Dragon Pass, which I feel like can protect you a lot more efficiently than they did in King of Dragon Pass. So I feel like you do have more tools at your disposal in Six Ages 1. And then Six Ages 2 is in a weird category of its own because the way that it presents itself is that so Six Ages takes place before King of Dragon Pass, when the original land of these people is still kind of at its height in Six Ages 1, and then you're witnessing the apocalypse. So Six Ages 2 is basically a survival game where you either are going to starve to death and people just leave your kingdom, or you get to see the end of the world. Yeah. And you also lose one slot for your advisors, which is held by the king. And almost
the king
always
is an
that
incompetent
king is
loser.
terrible. Yeah. So you're usually down a good, efficient advisor because you instead have to listen to this piss baby of a king talk about how he wants every decision to assert his authority. So, King of Dragon Pass. Our overall impressions of King of Dragon Pass first. It's good. I don't think I like the combat system, although I have figured out how to game the combat system in King of Dragon Pass a little bit more. For me, my proportions for raiding and cattle raiding, 2-5. 2 warriors, 5 archers, always works. For the normal combat system, overwhelming force. Once you can basically beat one clan and make them a tributary, that is basically the turning the corner moment. If you are able to successfully win your first battle, you can just continually, perpetually pound this one clan into the ground, and they will eventually become your tribute state. And that's, for me, usually when King of Dragon Pass gets a little easier. The problem is getting that to happen. And then I've never beaten this game. Braden, I don't think you've been able to beat this game either.
I got to the end of King of Dragon Pass once, and at the last moment, not enough people supported me to become king.
I have the same thing happen.
Messed up So one of the things that all these games let you do is you have to basically reenact moments from the mythology of the world. So you send a member of your clan into the spirit world to reenact one of the gods' many labors or whatever. And you don't have in King of Dragon Pass, you definitely have to stick to the script a little bit more. In Six Ages, you have a little more wiggle room, although going through the codex and reading what the gods actually did will help. But those are very powerful buffs a lot of the time. And
yeah, those hero quests
if you fuck
are
up
important.
too many of them, I mean, if you mess up too many of them, people won't respect you.
Yeah, you will just be in a hole where you can't really counter them. And in fact, if you mess up a hero quest, what will happen is that people will start mocking you, and either you reciprocate that by attacking them and turn that war so that they stop mocking you, or you just lose face across multiple factions, which is very difficult to recover from. There are some like weird endgame situations that can also crop up. You could get attacked by trolls. You could deal with flooding. And again, your ability to deal with those random events can be a make or break depending on your advisors, depending on how you allocated your magic points at the start of the season or year, and maybe the stuff that you have. But yeah, there's a weird Sim City element with those advisors that I guess we can talk about. You get seven or eight, I forget. Their skills are ranked from heroic to fair. The skills that you need to worry about are animals, bargaining, customs, leadership, magic, plants, and worship in King of Dragon Pass. I forget what the stats are for Six Ages, but it's
Magic.
a different... Yeah, magic and lore.
Yes.
But getting those skills to go up oftentimes requires you to send these people off on missions, exploring the world, completing those actions for every turn that you get per season. Again, 2 turns per season. And sometimes you'll have this person that you're pretty invested in, and maybe they completed a hero quest, and then they die trying to go find some spirits for you.
Listen,
which is a bummer.
sometimes, sometimes your expedition runs across some heretics from the far north who serve the immortal god emperor, the Pharaoh.
Yep.
And sometimes they get eaten by monsters. And sometimes they just disappear without any notice of why.
Yep.
Maybe you should have put more clan magic into exploration and picked a better leader.
But if you don't like RNG in your video games, I'm just going to go ahead and say neither of these games are. None of these games are free.
Games.
These are vibes games.
I want to be clear. The management part of these games, it's very much a thing where you do them on feel. And eventually you get a better grasp of what does and does not work. But I would not say these are great games if you want to manage a city. They're no Anno or SimCity for that matter. These are games that you play and you experience because you want weird art and weird mythological things to happen. And I love them.
Yeah, so I guess that leads to the part that I'm kind of excited about looking at this script. What are some of the actual game parts, like random events that you encountered?
So in Six Ages, there is and I think Six Ages, those games are a little bit better about like long-term consequences. So in Six Ages, the last time I played that game, it's like, hey, guess what? Some of the children in your clan are unusually skilled with fire magic. What should you do about this? And so what I did was I sent them to another clan who was good, were known for their magicians. And eventually what happens is, those kids grow up. One of them comes back to join the clan and be part of the clan ring. One of them, he goes nuts and asks you to support him on a hero quest to serve the sun god better. And then the third one, I married her off to the clan who trained her, and that led to a clan alliance. And so that's just one event that happens early on that actually leads to, like, interesting mechanical consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a bit in King of Dragon Pass. I don't want to spoil all of these because I think they're best experience, but there's a goof in King of Dragon Pass where a group of ne'er-do-wells who call themselves adventurers show up at your clan stead asking for hospitality, and everyone's like, you need to turn them away. Who are these weirdos? And if you let them in and, like, give them food and drink, it's like they trashed the place and ran off with your money.
Yeah.
They're foreigners and they can't be trusted. Their gods are not our gods.
Yeah, and you also have to be mindful of, okay, so you decided to do something. Just be mindful of how this is going to impact your relations with other people in the world, because if you even marginally choose to fudge the rules of your religion, and this applies to all 3 of these games, someone is going to remind you that you did that, and you should not have done that at all.
Listen, these wheel clans, they are heretics. They don't ride horses, ZP.
Yeah,
they ride chariots.
Yeah.
Can't trust them. Listen, they might worship some of the same gods, but the way they worship them is different than the way we worship them. Can't trust them. But at least we have more in common than those darn rams who worship the storm god.
Yeah, but
and then by the time you get to King of Dragon Pass, you are the storm people.
Right. And that's kind of a fun little bit, right? Like you discover, your clan transforms in really unique and interesting ways over time in these first 2 games, King of Dragon Pass and 6 Ages 1. And it's a very vibrant world where you start to lean into it. I feel like I do this all the time. I start reading the text. I start to kind of, like, become a character. And this is why when I look at the notes, like, we're supposed to talk about, like, how can I get away with calling this an RPG? This feels like a tabletop simulation game in the purest sense.
And
because you really do become a character in this world. And you really do think about what your character, what your interpretation of your leader should do or would respond. And there are skill checks, and you do worry about stat growth because you really get invested with your advisors and making sure that they become the best possible advisors. And when one of them passes away, you realize, oh, crap. Not my guide, not my trickster. Whatever will I do without my trickster?
You should always listen to your trickster, but also don't, because sometimes the trickster's like, what if I just magicked away all of this clan's cows?
Yeah. And then it's like, you're giving our cows back, or else we go into war.
Yeah, or else we're going to raid you.
But yeah, it's goofy, right? Like, it's really, really goofy and dumb, and there's no going around that fact. That's the best part. And I love that part of the game. You can tell that they don't really take themselves seriously. And that's kind of like one of the best parts of this game. You can take this seriously. Lord have mercy on your soul if you decide to actually, like, read up on the lore. If you want to actually
read the codex entries, you can.
But I guess this kind of goes back to the history of A-sharp, which is this is it. These are the only games that I think they make.
Yes.
You did some research. Is this all they do?
No. I think between King of Dragon Pass and the iPad version of King of Dragon Pass, I think they mostly did, like, productivity software. Like, King of Dragon Pass was the attempt to make a video game. And then when that didn't work, they went back to productivity software.
That's such a weird thing. I mean, it's not unheard of.
It's the reverse from Soft.
Yeah. It's not unheard of for a studio to kind of, like, turn to a moneymaker that's not gaming to keep the bills on. God, what was that one Russian developer? Was it C1 or they did the Il Stromovic games and then they went back to doing software? What was that developer called? They did Konung or something.
Yeah,
I'm losing it right now because I can't remember them. But anyways, yeah, good on them. But yeah, they made a weirdo game, and the only thing that I really want to just advise people is don't make alliances with those duck people.
Yeah, no.
But also don't attack the duck people right from the onset because they will mess you up. And then yeah, like just be aware that Six Ages 2 is like hard mode, and that's kind of cool. I kind of like the way that Six Ages 2 is like a hard mode version of this. I guess we should talk about it in its own little category. So with Six Ages 2 lights going out, as we kind of talked about, the game is basically a timed mission where you are presented with this being the apocalypse. Chaos is taking over. These are the very intermediate moments before the start of King of Dragon Pass, because Six Ages is a prequel. And again, the game presents it as like, you're going to lose. Like, the apocalypse is going to happen. Do you get to see it? Or do you get rolled over by forces of chaos? Do you die of starvation? Can you safeguard your clan long enough? And can you deal with this chuckle, you know what, of a king long enough to where you get to actually see the end? And these scenarios...
It reminds me of Total War Attila.
Yeah, it's not easy. It ain't easy. It's not easy by even the slightest bit. But it's kind of cool how they did this, because you also, in that menu, get to pick how long you want your campaign to be, which I really appreciated, that you can just say, yeah, give me your best shot and make it nice and short. But also I'm going to see it all. But yeah, I liked all three of these games. I think they're good. I would strongly advise that you maybe read up on the documentation for these games. There are some pretty helpful beginner's guides. Some are better than others, but just knowing what some of your actions are supposed to do, just knowing what you can and cannot do during the seasons is something. Just look it up. Don't learn by trial and error. It's such a bummer to do things and then have them mess up. But this is also something where you can't just follow a guide, because those random events are they're random, and no one or two times are you going to have the same advisors with the same stats. So maybe you fail this time, maybe you succeed this next time. But anyways, what would you say, Braden, is your advice for anyone even marginally interested in these games?
Don't look up the mechanics too much, but look up just enough to know what you're doing. For example, focus on food production. Get those fields cleared. You really should make sure you have enough room to plant crops and have herd animals.
Yeah. It's... Some of the mystique really is just learning the hard way and trying out different
also, don't
build
try
paths.
to win.
Yeah, don't try to win. Just let the game happen to you. And yeah, don't make alliances with the ducks, but don't try and kill them right away. But anyways, yeah, I respect these games, man. I respect these games because, look, they made a video game. And then they had another bite at the apple, and I think that they did the thing that they wanted to do, right?
Yes.
They made a sequel that I'd honestly say I would not have thought we'd be playing 3 of these games.
There's another one. There's going to be another Six Ages game to wrap up the trilogy in the next couple of years, which I'm excited for. I'm on board.
But yeah, my recommendations: Six Ages 1 first, King of Dragon Pass second, and if you're still around on this sicko parade,
if you want a bad time, a good
try
bad time,
Six Ages 2.
Yes.
But anyways, I think that's all I kind of have to say.
That's all I have to say. I wish we had gotten like a neutral party or a control group who was not already super into these games. But listen, we needed to lay up. We needed something that made us happy after fear and hunger.
And also, we're still learning how to do this stuff.
And also, if you think I know how to do any, you're catastrophically wrong. But let's just rank these games as chunk, and let's go to bit.ly/OTDE rank to see the ranking of video games that we at Off the Deep End have ranked. Number 1, Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven. Number 2, Suikoden the First. Number 3, Xenosaga Episode 1, Der Macht. Number 4, Etrian Odyssey 4. Number 5, Grandia 5. Bottom 5 are, let's see, Towers for the Game Boy Color, Tecmo Secret of the Stars, Aiden Chronicles, Unlimited Saga, and at the bottom, probably forever, is Hoshiwo Miruhito. So, ZP, where do you think we should?
Let's start let's start at the line of mediocrity.
The line of mediocrity. All right, so
it's gonna go above
Zelda
the line.
2,
Oh, it's better than Zelda 2.
Hybrid Heaven.
It's better than Hybrid Heaven.
Is this game better than Dragon Age 2? I would say yes.
Yeah. What's above Dragon Age 2?
Wizards and Warriors.
Ah, fuck. So now we have two weirdo CRPG
Yeah, two
things.
weirdo games.
You know what? We should have started here because I feel like ranking these two weirdo games would have been the better starting point. Okay.
And above Wizards and Warriors is NBA 2K16.
I don't think it's better than NBA.
Okay.
So
Do you
it's
think it's better than Wizards and Warriors?
Wizards and Warriors is more functional, but I can imagine a world where I replay King of Dragon Pass or Six Ages. I don't know if I'll ever play Wizards and Warriors.
I will.
Yeah, you're right. I probably will.
Let's put this above King of Dragon. I would say let's put this above Dragon Age 2.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really Wizards and Warriors. Where do I put it here? Where do you come? Like, I think I have slightly more.
Never mind.
I have slightly more nostalgia for maybe King of Dragon Pass than I do Wizards and Warriors.
I have a fondness for this game that translates to I want to replay these games once every few years and probably not finish them, but just put like 8-ish hours just as a vibes thing.
Yeah. So it's above Wizards. I don't know, man. Wizards and Warriors has that voice acting.
It
the
does.
Weird 3D turn-based combat.
It sure does. I would put this above Dragon Age 2.
Okay, let's keep it at above Dragon Age 2, but not above Wizards and Warriors?
Yes.
All right. Okay, I feel good.
All right, so our new number 16, King of Dragon Pass and 6. All right, do we want to do the secondary thing?
Yes.
Secondary thing that you wanted to do?
Why don't you introduce this while I pull this stuff up?
So, Game of the Year.
We didn't do one.
We didn't do one this year.
So we're going to do
because, Jeff. You ever hear about this guy, Jeff?
Yeah.
He used to work here, but now he doesn't. And
looks like I forgot to save
we're here to put in a stealth Game of the Year pod with just the two of us. Who's going to stop us? The man? I'm the host of this now. I am God.
All right. I am not. Okay, let's go down the list. And again, what we're going to do as a makeshift game of the year is we are going to go through the games that were not a part of the previous two game of the year things, and we are going to give superlatives to every game. So we have to say something about every single game that we ranked. This is going to be painful in some regards, as you'll find out, because I'm going to start from the bottom, Braden. I'm going to start from the freaking bottom.
Start at the bottom.
I'm going to start at the bottom.
We're back here.
All right. So, Braden, if you had to say something in commendation to Hoshiwo Mirohito, what kind of ribbon would you stick to its shirt?
Most dysfunctional video game.
God, is it? I was going to say most incompetent, but do I actually think that it's more incompetent than Secret of the Stars?
It is from a basic technical perspective.
So we'll say, so you said most dysfunctional. I'd say weirdest mutant hybrid thing, or you know what? I got it. Worst UI UX in video game history. Because
it's not Master of Orion 3.
That battle screen, based off of what we've played, that battle screen's terrible. The fact that the towns are invisible, most aggressive anti-user gameplay. Most anti-user gameplay. Okay. Next game
Tee up the next
here.
one.
So it's not you. Anthem. So Anthem is most empty calories, like the absolute most empty calorie thing that we've ever played. Maybe
it's up there.
I got absolutely nothing out of it other than a 2.5 hour conversation, and have very little to show from my time dedicated to Anthem. And I don't know about you, I can't imagine a world where I really ever touch that thing again, and I just feel empty about everything that I put into it.
I apologize, but I'm going to talk about a recent and modern video game here on this podcast.
Oh, snap!
But I played roughly 10 hours of the new video game Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, which I was generously gifted by a friend of mine who worked on the video game in some capacity. I think that game is better than Anthem because it has a story and characters
and an arc that actually has a conclusion.
It's still
sort of. It's still a work in progress, but it's still already accomplished more than Anthem.
Yes. Anthem is nothing. Anthem is a void.
Is it the biggest condemnation against AAA games as a service thing?
Yeah.
Or is it Marvel?
No, because people like the Avengers single-player stuff.
And they did eventually add in interesting story stuff.
For people,
yeah,
was the part where Crystal Dynamics tried to make it a live service game, but all of the live service elements were bad.
Yeah. All right, so it's the most empty calorie video game.
All right.
Next game. Boo, boo, boo. Towers, Lord Banff's Deceit. Okay.
Most impressive, least functional port.
Yeah. Most technically impressive given the limitations, but still pretty bad thing.
Maybe you should not shove a traditional CRPG-ass dungeon crawler onto the Game Boy Color, a device with...
That actually, you know what? I take it back. That game might actually have the worst UI UX we've ever seen. Because the actual Game Boy screen where you have to pause the combat to like move that cursor around and click these little pixels to like perform necessary actions, that was terrible. There are
too many things that game lets you do for the limitations of the Game Boy Color, but goddamn, I respect it. And I respect that they also ported Towers 2 to the Game Boy Color, and it was never released.
I mean, that Towers 2 intro thing might actually be the most technically impressive thing I've seen on the Game Boy Color. Biomotor Unitron. This is maybe is this the best Pokemon clone that we've played?
That we've played, yes.
So how do we contextualize this? Best weirdo game for the Neo Geo Pocket Color?
Best,
because people are just going to play them fighting games.
Yeah, best how did this get ported to the Switch game?
Oh, that is a good one. Weirdest Switch port.
Did you know that what's it called? The TurboGrafx CD JRPGs that like Working Designs worked on finally got like a Switch port?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what they're called. I'm going to edit out looking this out.
But anyways, it's maybe the best non-fighting game on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. I would argue. It's a cool thing. It's not the most complex game. It's not even the best thing on the platform. They're
Cosmic Fantasy. They released Cosmic Fantasy 1 and 2 on the Switch, which is two TurboGrafx CD RPGs, one of which never came out over here. So, yes. Biomotor Unitron up there.
Yeah. All right. 3. Elex 2. I'm going to leave this to you. Actually, no.
Elex 2
best
is...
concert. Best in-game concert.
Best in-game concert. Best Jeff reaction.
Yeah. Least improved sequel and or follow-up.
I would argue, based on what... first off, shout-outs to our homies at Piranha Bytes. We hope everything goes well for you. But also, Elex 2, least improved sequel. That game seems like a real... Even the people who like Elex 1 don't seem to like Elex.
Risen, worst depiction of slavery in a video game?
I think you could probably find worse.
Worst texture pop-in glitch?
That was pretty...
most current, 2023's most distasteful used depiction of slavery as a gameplay gimmick.
Boy howdy. Least sensitive
bad.
Colonialism this side of
the world.
This side of
a European developer didn't depict the imperialism in the most tasteful manner possible.
Hey, guess what? Piranha Bytes is a studio of 25 people in northeastern Germany.
Yeah.
They're not gonna have maybe not always be on the level. And boy, Risen 2 and 3, huh?
Yeah, man. When Risen 2 broke, it was a sight to see, let's say. I'm going to leave this one to you. Gothic 1. What
Gothic 1
certificate do we give Gothic 1?
Gothic 1 is most I would say best debut. Because they made Gothic 2 and then it was all downhill for them.
That's the weird thing is I think we've already talked about it. We don't need to belabor the point, but the fact that they have somehow gone backwards in the competency of their game design is bananas. And I think part of it is they are still trying to make their version of a BioWare game when no one's making that anymore.
Still a small studio.
Yeah.
And maybe, hey, guess what? Making games for HD consoles maybe
is hard.
Is hard.
Again, heart goes out to those in Piranha Bytes. We hope that you guys get through this weird...
They find another publisher.
I hope that you don't get embraced. All right. Etrian Odyssey 4, Legends of the Titan. This was the layup last year. This was our most feel-good video game experience.
Yes.
It was an absolute delight playing Etrian Odyssey 4. I hear mixed things about the PC port in terms of needing to do things with a mouse. I would like... I wish that Nintendo did not shut all of that stuff down so as that you could play games like Etrian Odyssey 4. But what are you going to do? It was the most feel-good video game.
It's the game. It's the best game we played last year. That or Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Speaking of which, Panzer Dragoon Saga. That was our game of the year. Was Panzer Dragoon Saga our game of the year?
I think we did agree it was our game of the year.
Like Deep Listen's game of our year. It really is. I'm glad that game actually lives up to the hype, because as I wrote about when I did my retrospective on Panzer Dragoon, when you think about the way that people who like Shenmue, Dreamcast weirdos, talk about Shenmue, and they build it up as being this like monolith of like video game design, and then it doesn't live up to that hype at all. This game lives up to the hype, even if it's still pretty short and it doesn't quite do everything perfectly. It is absolutely just top to bottom a cool thing. And I'm still, as Jeff said when we did our game of the year stuff, I'm still amazed that no one has even made one go at making that combat system in their own version of an RPG.
Like,
still kind of
there's not
surprised.
an indie attempt to recreate that combat. And that's a shame, because it's very cool.
All right.
Like Etrian Odyssey 4 is technically ranked higher on our list. And listen, I think it's the best Etrian Odyssey game. I think it's a good time, maybe peak dungeon crawler. But in terms of unique experiences we had last year, in terms of like, oh wow, this thing actually lives up to the reputation that the 5 people who played it cared about. It's Panzer Dragoon Saga. That game is very cool.
It's very cool. Game of our year, 2023. Digital Devil Monogatari Megami Tensei.
Was that last year?
Yeah, it was on the list. It's been a long year, Braden.
Yeah, okay. Best Foundation.
Yeah. It's kind of cool seeing how much of that DNA that got Atlas going still kind of carried over.
Forward.
Yeah. Devil Negotiations. It's pretty still a work in progress, I'd say. It's kind of cool in Persona 5, but you see that DNA, that vestigial DNA. I'm looking forward to this one. Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms Pool of Radiance 2 Ruins of Mithranor, whichever version at this point. This has to be
1.4.
This has to be most hilarious glitch. Is it a glitch or?
Yes, it's a bug, and that game, I apologize, because that game was like, I am so stoked to see this sicko bad game, and then it turns out it's just really boring, and you can tell it's busted mechanically because they had to spend a year porting all of the rule set over to 3rd edition. And yeah, I do not recommend Pool of Radiance Ruins of Mithranor if you want a bad D&D game. If you want a bad D&D game, may I suggest Descent to Undermountain or Death Keep,
or the game that uses 4th edition that Braden refuses to let me pick.
No, because that game's just shitty Diablo with broken multi.
What if you and I try to play that game as a co-op thing?
It doesn't work. I looked it up.
Anyways, our last game that we need to assess, Legacy of the Wizard. Worst gameplay mechanic? The whole...
Most, least enthusiasm for a Yuzo Koshiro soundtrack.
Yeah.
That you will ever find for anything Off the Deep End will otherwise cover.
That, and I still kind of can't get over the fact that you can't hot swap your characters mid-dungeon. You have to drag your ass all the way back to that house. So if you're doing some of the late game stuff, you do have to make this humiliating and debilitating trek, and it sucks.
It's like how Donkey Kong 64 becomes infinitely better if you put the mod that lets you switch Kongs.
Yeah, just not good. I can't believe that they did not realize they needed to do that. It's weird and bananas and bonkers that it's the way that it is. But hey,
all right. There we go.
That's our game of the year makeshift diddly do.
It's a fan pick, so it's time It's time to pull up the randomizer. I'm going. There are currently 9 games. We have not yet played for the fan picks, and I am going to pick a random number. All right, number 5. We are doing Breath of Fire 3, which is recommended to us by DG Relkin, friend of the show. He was on our Arcanum podcast. So you can look forward to Dragons and Capcom, and it'll be fun. Maybe we'll get Gino to play it with us. He likes those PlayStation games.
I sometimes, I know this is sacrilege, I sometimes get Breath of Fire confused with Wild Arms, because they kind of overlap for me in terms of being B-tier JRPGs of that era, or like non-Square JRPGs of that era, non-Enix, that are developers trying to get their feet wet using new technology on a new platform, and it kind of sort of works. And I'm not going to deny that these games are bad, but they are workmanlike, let's just say. I'm excited because I remember
people like this game a lot.
Back in the early days of Giant Bomb, there were a lot of people who really, 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 really liked Breath of Fire. Is it Breath of Fire or Breath of Death? It's the weird translation.
Breath of Fire. Breath of Death is the Zeboid RPG.
Breath of Fire games, and they would constantly yammer about how 3 is the game to play and that it deserved to be revived by Capcom, and all they would ever get is like weird cameos and like
shitty mobile games.
Capcom versus games. But I am a little frightened by what I have seen and heard of how long that game takes.
We'll see. It's a PSX era JRPG. It's been a while since we've played like a legit like one of those, and I'm excited to give it a shot. Yeah. So you can look forward to that for us in a couple weeks. And remember, you can support us on Patreon. Our theme song, Halfway, is done by SuperSex420. Support them on Bandcamp. And also, remember that we love you.
No such thing as cheating in a single-player game.
Right. There's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game. That's the thing that we say now. Yes. Goodbye. That's a wrap.
All right. Let's wrap.
Hi there. Braden here. Just gonna say, actually, between the recording of this podcast and its release, we hit our patron goal. So our next episode will not be Breath of Fire 3, it will be Ultima 9, which is sort of like Breath of Fire 3, except it's a disaster that destroyed an entire company. So you can look forward to that, and then we will return with our regularly scheduled fan pick.